Right, it's Friday, July 14th. This is an end of the day and end of the week SPY report, and today we end up with kind of a two-up uh, failure bar or reversal looking bar where we kind of took out the high the previous day but closed red. It was a good week overall in terms of going up each day, two up, two up, two up, two up, and we end up with a nice weekly green bar, which projects to follow through a little bit higher into next week at a minimum. We might have to pull back as long as we kind of hold through the midpoint. You can see the midpoint of this bar lines up with kind of the open of the month, this green line, to hold the continuity of the month up. So as long as whatever happens early in the week, as long as we kind of hold there could be some really good buy signals to follow through higher. But, you just got to let price action lead the way there. But that's kind of the expectation. Today, after exhaustion risk that even was evident yesterday a little bit, although the reason I think yesterday moved up, as we discussed, is because that was kind of the first real follow-through day after turning the monthly chart back to green. We kind of went early in the month red here, and then once we got green, now we're kind of moving towards higher monthly targets, but you're at exhaustion risk each time and you're kind of gapping up. And today was another example of gapping. Here's the pre-market range and you're gapping higher. Also at 9 o'clock or an hour into trading, there was a consumer sentiment or something released, so you were going to get volatility at 9 o'clock. So in other words, the first bar really didn't follow through. Second bar paused and it looked green, and the minute this bar opened, there was a report, and so you can't really be looking to go long right there knowing you're at exhaustion risk and there's a report. You got a lot of volatility. Then the market kind of started up here and just for a brief second try to go higher before immediately turning lower. And if you try to buy this breakout, I guess you had almost immediately get out and take a small loss and start watching from there. I was more, knowing the trend is overall up, I was looking more at individual stocks, which I'll show you in a second. But in terms of just finishing up on the SPY, what happened was it did come down. At this point, after all this exhaustion risk, and I've talked many times how when the overall bias is up in the bigger picture, and you're a little bit exhausted on the short time frames, you're kind of taking out liquidity on the downside before moving higher. And that's kind of what became the theme of the day. Once you kind of, number one, you came down and took out that first, that volatility low after the report was issued. Then the market came up and it had this reversal bar here, kind of move, after this down move of the day. We didn't reach the pre-market lows. We kind of came up and had this big reversal. I shot a video here how I bought some SPY puts. I was expecting this low to be taken out and also eventually this low. And I discussed how I broke even on that trade. I then re-entered some SPY puts here and it became a nice trade to end the day. And if you really want to be holding on, I think you'll probably be in good shape to follow through a little lower. A 2 down bar will kind of get us down to here as a first target, and then you have this whole gap to possibly fill. Again, as long as we stay above the green line, we'll look for anything down, and then that can't continue would be a pretty strong buy to the upside. But I don't know how next week's going to unfold, so we'll see what happens. But at least initially, you're expecting a little bit down, follow through lower, and you do have some gaps to fill down here. So we'll see what happens. But again, given the overall bias to the upside, but given the mixed nature of it all, I was more interested in individual stocks. I mean, you could see here all day long. I traded Netflix to the short side, Google to the long side. I traded UNH, and then I got to those SPY puts I was talking about. So if we look, around the board, UNH, even though the market was having its struggles, was really a nice long trade here today. That was moving up and it moved above its, again, think about moving above pre-market highs, good opening price action, and it has bigger picture targets above. Whereas a stock like Netflix, I kind of went in line with more of the market. I kind of bought puts in here, expecting the lows. You can see the liquidity down here to be taken out after this type of an open. And I shot a video on that. You can look at it. And then eventually it paused and moved a lot lower. Google was that was one that actually I thought I'd give it a shot to buy the upside, and I discussed how I broke even here because it didn't immediately follow through. That just kind of settled in and went sideways for the rest of the day, and would have been a losing trade if you try to hold on in here. And I'm trying to think if there was anything. What was the other? UNH, Netflix, Google. No, that was pretty much it for me. And then I went to the SPY and I was trying to, anticipate kind of pullbacks to take out some liquidity. Even if it wasn't going to collapse, I still thought it would head lower before possibly heading higher. So that's the end of the the week here, green. The monthly chart, you can see it's up. We've discussed this, how it's a 2-up bar, continuation after this breakout bar, and we are working towards those targets until proven otherwise. We'll have to see, what you can get here. If you move above the weekly high next week and come to the midpoint, that could be a failure. Other than that, anything opening down, it's just going to be inside of this green bar, and we'll expect the green bar to be taken out to the upside. Maybe end up with an inside week, and we'll have to see what happens the week after that. Who knows? But green bar, you kind of expect higher, and yet you have this exhaustion risk here with a little bit of potential and some gaps to fill on the downside. So we're just going to have to see how things open on Monday. But today, the only real thing, in my opinion, was to try some SPY puts, just knowing the nature of algorithmic trading, taking out liquidity, after some exhaustion risk to the downside, and the intraday structure kind of set. So you don't know if that's going to happen, but when you see the structure in play, taking out the lows here, then only moving up to the halfway point of that move, and then kind of coming down, seeing two obvious targets here, that's how you kind of know or anticipate that the liquidity will be taken out within this uptrend, on the downside. So we'll see how things open next week. But overall, pretty strong week to the upside here. So the trend is still higher in the bigger picture.